loves, it is currently midnight on December 31st, which means there are exactly 24 hours left to get some last books read before the end of the year. For the past couple years, I've spent New Year's trying to read as many books as possible, and I'm going to be taking you along for the journey this year. So I have a stack of some graphic novels, manga, and some short novels that I'm going to be trying to get through today to see how much I can read in 2023. I am currently sitting at 366 books read, so my goal is to try to finish at least 4 more books today to hit 370. The first book I'm going to be reading today is Witch King by Martha Wells. I started this a few days ago. I have about 50 pages left. I was trying to finish it yesterday before this day, but I couldn't do it, had to go to bed. So this is what I am going to be trying to read first, and I will let you know my thoughts once I've finished it. It is 1:22 in the morning, and I have now finished Witch King by Martha Wells. The plot on the inside of the panel explains the plot that the main character was murdered and then wakes up in a different body and has to figure out who murdered him. I didn't really get that story. The driving conflict seemed to be more that the main character's friend or ally, it's not really expanded on whether they are connected personally. Their friend Zayed's wife has been kidnapped, and that's more of the driving narrative. And there's kind of 2 narratives going on. There's the current day chapters, which are about Kai, the main character, waking up and him and Zayed trying to track down Taryn, Zayed's wife. But then there are also past chapters that go into kind of how Zayed and Taryn met, but not how they are personally connected. And there's a little bit of element of, betrayal going on, but I didn't feel that I was invested enough in the characters personally to care that they betrayed each other, nor was I given enough information about the world, or I at least didn't understand the world enough to understand how the betrayal would have impact on the world on a more wide scale other than a personal. So I ended up giving this a 2.75. There were some little nuggets of interesting things going on here. There's like creatures mentioned, like chimera. There's the underlying lore of the demons who possess humans in the upper world and the underneath world and all this stuff. But it seemed to mention those things in passing and then focus on a narrative that I just didn't particularly find I was invested in. Goodreads seems inconclusive as to whether this is a series or not. So if there is a second book, I probably would still pick it up, because now that we have a basis of the lore established, I do want to explore more of this world. I just didn't find that the plot of this particular book drew me in. So 2.75 for this one, and 1 book closer to midnight. I am going to make myself some coffee and start my next book, which is 19 Claws and a Blackbird by Augustina Vesterica. This is a short story collection, so this should be a fairly quick read. It is, I think, 150 pages. So I will enjoy some coffee and get started on this. It is now 4:30 in the morning, and I have finished 19 Claws and a Blackbird by Augustina Vesterica. This is a series of short stories that are dark, and the front tab says it's dark humor. I didn't find any of them to be particularly humorous, but they're definitely dark, and I am going to give this collection a 3.25 star rating. I rated each of the 20 stories individually based on how much I enjoyed them, took an average, which ended up being 3.15, rounds up to a 3.25. I gave 6 of the stories a 2-star, 7 of the stories 3-star, 5 of them I gave a 4-star rating, and then there were 2 standouts that I gave a 5-star rating. The 2 short stories that I gave a 5-star rating to were Elena Marie Sandov's and The Continuous Equality of the Circumference. They just were very dark, and I enjoyed them specifically. This is another of the 2023 releases that I can now take off my TBR shelf and put on my red shelf. And next, I am going to give my eyes a break and be able to multitask for a little bit by listening to an audiobook. And I am going to be listening to Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. This is a horror novel about the Ku Klux Klan turning into actual monsters. I have already started this a couple days ago, but I've only listened to the first 2 chapters. So I'm going to paint my nails, maybe play some phone games while I listen to Ring Shout, and I will provide you with some updates once I've gotten a bit farther in. It is now 6:45 in the morning, and I have finished Ring Shout and a delicious grilled cheese sandwich. Ring Shout is a horror novel about a kind of alternate world where the Ku Klux Klan members turn into actual monsters, and so we follow our main character who fights the monsters, and the Ku Klux Klan is coming up with some nefarious plot, and she has to stop it. I really liked it. I ended up giving it a 4.25. For being as short as it was, I felt like it did cover a very good length of plot. I was intrigued by it. I really enjoyed it. The characters were fairly good as well, and you really got to know them, and the writing style was really interesting. The one thing about this is I did listen to the audiobook, and at the climax with the big bad evil guy, I won't go into more detail than that for spoilers, the narrator's voice for the big bad evil guy sounded like Charlie the Unicorn. That kind of took me out of the drama a little bit, but overall I did really enjoy it, so 4.25. Now that I've finished Ring Shout, I'm going to switch back to physical for a little bit and start off a bit easy with a manga. So first I'm going to read volume 13 of Blood on the Tracks, and then when I finish that, I'm gonna go straight into Everything the Darkness Eats. So I will see you in a little bit for another update. It is now 8 a.m. and I have completed book 370 of the year, Blood on the Tracks volume 13. This series is about a codependent relationship between a mother and her son. This volume specifically, there has been a 25-year time jump at this point, and this one, not a lot really happens in terms of what I've come to expect from Blood on the Tracks, but it is very clearly setting up where the story is going next. So still going to pick up the next volume, but this one just gets a 3.25 from me. I have also started Everything the Darkness Eats by Eric LaRocca. I have read about the first 80 pages, which is the entirety of part 1. This so far has just been establishing the characters. We're in this small town where people are apparently homophobic, and some elderly people in the town have gone missing. So we've been introduced to a few different characters so far, and I'm interested to see where they go from there. But because I have accomplished the 370 book goal, I am going to reward myself with a nap. I am going to stop reading physically for a moment, and I am going to listen to the audiobook of 12 Angry Men and see if I can fall asleep while listening to that. But I'm gonna set an alarm and only nap for 2 hours max. That will still give me plenty of hours in the day to maybe hit 375, but renew my spirit because my eyes are getting a little crossed trying to read this tired. So nap time with an audiobook, and I'll update you guys once I have awoken. So it is now about 10:30. I've napped, we've rallied, we've had some chocolate, and I did finish 12 Angry Men before I fell asleep, and I would rate it a 3-star. So if you aren't familiar with 12 Angry Men, it is about a jury who is going into deliberations on a youth who has murdered his father, allegedly. And he is a member of an underprivileged community. So, in the jury room, 11 of the jurors, within the first 5 minutes of discussions, want to convict him as guilty. And because it is a death penalty case, there's one holdout juror who's like, wait, I'm not comfortable sentencing someone to death after we've discussed this for 5 minutes. Let's discuss this at least for an hour. And then as they kind of discuss and explain their reasoning for why they think he's guilty, they realize that they are making a lot of assumptions about him. And it is originally a play, so I listened to the audiobook version, which is acted out, and honestly, I think just watch the movie. The movie is really good. I watched it in a law class in university because I took an entire course about juries, and I would say that that was probably equal, if not better experience than listening to the audiobook. So I would say this is the one time that maybe go the movie route. I think that's a better experience. So I am going to fuel up with a nice Sex on the Beach protein shake and get back to reading physically with Everything the Darkness Eats by Eric LaRocca. It is almost noon, so we are halfway through our 24-hour reading marathon, and I just finished Everything the Darkness Eats by Eric LaRocca. I'm giving this a 3.25 stars. This is a horror novel about a small town. There are essentially 3 main storylines that we're following in this book. The first one is Ghost, who is a widower who really struggles to connect with people since his wife has passed away, and also has this spirit following him. There's also Malik, who is a police officer in this small town and is experiencing some extreme homophobia hate crimes. And then there is Mr. Crowley, who is this eccentric rich guy who is like kidnapping people in the town to fuel some kind of ritual. So those are the kind of main character plot lines, and then they obviously overlap as is wont to do. And I would say that if you are going into this, be aware that there are some homophobic hate crimes. There's also some extreme sexual assault. So trigger warnings if those are something you're trying to avoid. I had very low expectations going into this because it has like a 2.8 rating on Goodreads, but I gave it a 3.25. I did really like the characters in the book, and I was intrigued to continue with it to figure out what was going on, and it was fine. The plot wasn't anything super unique or mind-blowing, but it was interesting, so a 3.25 from me. Since it is noon, I am going to make myself some lunch, and I'm going to take a little reading break to watch Katie Coulson's Best Book of the Year premiere, and after that I am going to move on to reading Chlorine by Jade Song, which, beautiful cover. I'm very excited to read this. Alright, it is 5.5 hours since my last update. I've kind of been jumping around a bit, so I hadn't finished anything. I did start Chlorine, and I've read about 2/3 of it. I kind of broke that up between reading a bit of this and then listening to the audiobook for The Man That Dies Twice by Richard Osman. And I did just finish Volume 5 of Olympus. This is a webcomic that's being published as a book about the love story between Persephone and Hades, and features a whole cast of the Greek gods. It's not exactly strictly following the original mythology of all of the gods. It's kind of a modernized version of it, and I've been enjoying it. It sometimes jumps around a little bit. They'll go from being totally in love to no, we can't be together, and then oh, we're making out again in like 3 successive chapters. I am enjoying it. I do like a little bit of a lighter take on the Greek gods, so I'm giving this a 3.5. Since it's 5:30, it's my dinner time, so I'm gonna heat up some Chinese food and try to finish Chlorine. Alright, we're gonna make this a quick update. I have finished Chlorine by Jade Song. I'm going to rate it a 3.25. This is a novel about our main character, Ren, who is on a swim team because she is obsessed with mermaids to the point where she thinks she's no longer a girl, she thinks she's a mermaid, and she takes some very radical action to make herself a mermaid. I'm going to rate this a 3.25. I think this one suffered from me having really high expectations of it, but the best thing I can think of to describe how I felt about this is that it felt like YA Our Wives Under the Sea. The main character is in high school on a high school swim team. A good 3/4 of the book is just about high school swim competitions and how she doesn't feel human and how competitive it is. And based on the author's note at the beginning, I think a lot of that part is based on Jade Song's real experience being a competitive swimmer. And then in the last quarter, it goes into the drastic action she takes to become a mermaid, which I was intrigued by that. Oh my god. But I just think that because the characters were in high school, it was a bit harder for me to connect and relate to the characters versus Our Wives Under the Sea, which has a similar type of premise, in my opinion, but because they are adult characters, I just felt I related to that story a bit more. Maybe if I had read this in high school, I would have really enjoyed it, but reading it as an adult, it was a 3.25 for me. It's currently 7:56, which means midnight is in 4 hours. I have 8 hours and 2 minutes left in The Man Who Died Twice, which means that at 2x speed, I can finish this basically right at midnight. So, I am going to open Cyberpunk 2077 to have something to do with my hands while I listen to the audiobook, and I will hopefully give you an update at the countdown to midnight that that book is complete, and we can do a final count of the number of books that I completed in this 24-hour marathon. It is 10 to midnight, and I have finished The Man Who Died Twice. My thoughts on it don't have any. There are no thoughts in my brain right now. I am so tired. So, I am going to not try and read another book tonight because there's 10 minutes left in the day. It would take me 10 minutes to pick a book to start reading, so I am calling it on the marathon. I have finished 9 books. I will give you my final thoughts tomorrow morning once I have recovered brain capacity. This is also my second time filming this clip because I had the wrong camera on and filmed this entire thing pointing at a wall. So if that's not evidence that I need to sleep before doing any more of this. Good night. Good morning and happy new year. I have had a very restorative 8 hours of sleep and have my brain together enough to give final thoughts. Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman on audiobook. These are cozy mystery stories focused on the elderly residents of a retirement village in the UK. There's the dry British humor as well as a older perspective, which is nice. And I think that the strength of these books are really the characters. They really draw you in. I particularly find Elizabeth fascinating. And this particular one was about some diamonds that had gone missing. And I thought the plot was interesting and had some twists along the way, but nothing that really blew me away. So based on the strengths of the characters, it gets a 3.5, and I'll probably continue the series in 2024. So those are the 9 books I completed in 24 hours on New Year's Eve, and I hope you all had a lovely holiday season and an even better 2024. And if you made it to the end of this video, please leave in the comments down below what the last book you finished in 2023 was, or what your first read of 2024 is going to be. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.